discussion bits in a minute. Yeah, John, OK.
OK. Well, I think that all made complete sense to me and quite incredible, some of those statistics. I guess what I want to talk about is what happens if you get your own way? What happens if we reduce the cars and improve the amount of green space? Who is going to look after that green space? How can it function? How can it be any good going forward? So I'd say green space is the most important place, the most important thing. So the people that look after our green space are the most important people, don't you think? But they're not talked about as the most important people, aren't they? Gardeners are not talked about as the most important people. Here's a little snippet from your bill, Caroline. And I would say you could put gardener in front of all those statements and they would deliver a lot of that stuff that you've put in there. Not all, but certainly a lot. Because they're on the ground, in the space, actually understanding what's going on. And they could be feeding back to you in your department when you get your department, of course. So this is the system we have at the moment. This is the system of front-loading our investment in green space. So there's three very nice guys here, I'm sure, very nice people, holding a three-handled stainless steel spade. And I would suggest that the money that they've spent on the spade is going to be more than the money that they'll pay someone to water that tree. And that is the system we have. It's all up front. It's all about infrastructure, and it's never about the care. We ignore the care. We ignore. There's no honesty about. There's lots of spaces that are described as sustainable. They're not sustainable unless you have someone looking after them. It doesn't matter how much recycled material or reclaimed material you use on the project. If you have no one to look after them long term, they are not sustainable. So let's be honest in our industry about this stuff. Here's a really good example. If you have gardeners, so more gardeners, you get less of that rubbish on the right-hand side of my slide, which I'll describe for you, is pretty much all granite. So more granite, tiny amount of dirt, more granite frame than dirt. That, to my mind, is what we're left with. That's the sadness of a lot of our spaces in cities. And the reason that happens, I would suggest, is that we don't give the confidence to our designers, our landscape architects, to say, design me a space and I'll make sure it's looked after. I'll give you gardeners to look after it. And as soon as you give that reassurance to our landscape designers, they can design more porous spaces, less of that terribleness that you never want to sit in. You can design much less hard landscaping, much more soft landscaping, which means much more porous surfaces, much more food growing, much more joy. And that is what comes if you give confidence to designers. But at the moment, they're probably told that their budget for looking after space is tiny. So therefore, they're designing in things that are awful. They're designing in granite that doesn't need to looking after, but it's just awful. So we need to free our designers up and give them the confidence to design good things. This is the housing estate that we looked after in Clapton Park, and this is my favourite resident, Zainab, and she's baking bread. Now, that to me is a very successful. That's what sums up good green space maintenance, and it doesn't have a plant in it. It's a Turkish resident, Zainab, who has the confidence and the joy of baking bread in a community space. That's because we gave her space to grow food before this. And then when she grew her food, she felt confident to bake her bread in that space. That's what you can deliver if you have quality, creative, caring green space maintenance. Not the sadness of green space maintenance, especially within poorer areas. The sadness of the money being extracted from maintenance of social housing, green space, to the point where our contract we signed just said, cut grass, trim hedges and poison weeds. That pretty much was it. This is back in 2000. It's probably got a bit better, but it's still awful. We sucked the joy out of maintenance and the joy of looking after green space because we took the money away. If we invest money in people and people's energy, that is the best investment, financially the best investment you can make, as well as all the other things that come from it. So if you have more gardeners, you can have more food growing space. If you have more gardeners, you can have an understanding of what people want. So this is an image of 2 of our residents next to a grapevine. Right? The grapevine cost us £10 to plant. People on our estate, the big Turkish group of residents, they use dolma, they use grapevine leaves for cooking, and they can't get it. And all they wanted from me, they didn't want a fancy piece of infrastructure, they just wanted me to plant a grapevine, which I did for 10 quid. Right? That was one of the best things we'd ever done. Cheap, but it requires people, energy, listening, and all the other things that come from having gardeners in green space. You create good jobs if you invest in gardeners. You create good quality local jobs if you invest in gardeners, don't you? And that's what you do when you invest in people instead of stuff. Gardeners are the best people to record ecology. Who's the best people to record ecology? The people on the ground with their head in the bushes, in the place. They're the people that notice the ecology. You know, other than that, you're going to send an ecologist in once a year to do that job. What's he going to find? Gardeners can do all these things. Yeah, they've got more eyes on the ground, less destruction. This is a recent example of an incredibly important heritage tree being virtually destroyed because no one noticed, really. And that might not happen. That's white webs. That wouldn't have happened maybe if there were more people on the ground. We have more biodiversity. Obviously, you have more biodiversity. If you have more gardeners, you have more disruption, you have more care, you have more biodiversity. And there's plenty of surveys that actually absolutely reinforce that. You have better health. Everybody knows that. If the quality of the green space is good, people are happier, people are healthier. But you've got to create these spaces outside the door. We don't necessarily need them in the parks. We need to give access to people to good quality green space that's in front of their door. You know those places that people don't care about? The parks always get the money, yeah? But the bits of grass, the bits of lawn outside where people live, no one cares about those. But they're the most important places, and they can be delivered by gardeners. If you have more gardeners, you can get rid of some of the ear protection, so gardeners can spend more time without ear protection on because they have time, it's budgeted in. Let's budget in time for gardeners to talk to residents. Where's that in a contract? Write that in the contract. That would absolutely, completely... we get more joy. We get more colour. I'm being hurried up mildly. We get less shouty signs, yeah? We can get rid of these things, yeah? Because we've got a gardener who can talk to residents, explain why they shouldn't play football up against the wall, maybe, not just stick a shouty sign up. So, in other words, we need to invest in people. We invest in people and not stuff. That's what we need to do.
Excellent, thank you. Thanks, John. So a fourth perspective. Actually, I mean, one of the interesting things about gardening is a lot of people actually like doing it and don't have anywhere to garden. I do wonder whether there is an opportunity for somehow matching up people who'd like to say, this is my patch, I'm going to look after it within certain parameters. It's a public space. And I'm not being paid to do it, because we don't have budgets for that. But you know, you could.
No, but that's
cheating, is it?
That's
cheating. It's paid gardeners.
It's no good. Right. You've got to have a paid gardener as a default to prop the whole volunteer system up. We can't. It's so easy to. And we have enough money in this country. We spend enough money on massive pieces of infrastructure, green infrastructure. We need to extract some of that and give it to employers.
The upfront stuff needs to go on. Less flashy upfront and a bit more.
Absolutely, because you ask residents what they want, they prefer to have another gardener.
Right. And that granite thing that you showed us in the picture, where was that, out of interest?
Oh, should I say that? I don't know. Yeah, okay, it was in Hull.
Okay.
It was in Hull,
okay.
yeah.
But you see that kind of thing all over the place. Yeah, no,
yeah, of course.
Yeah. Right, well, look, we've had 4 excellent, really thought-provoking presentations: politics, protest, infrastructure, maintenance, gardening, maintenance, people. Right, let's take some contributions from people in the audience in the room. Please say who you are. I'm going to take a bunch of contributions. I'm not going to get panellists to comment one by one on everything that's said, but I'd like to hear what people in the room are thinking. And we'll start in this corner over here. We've got 1 and then 2 over here. Yeah, whichever order you like, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Really interesting presentation.
Say who you are as well.
Yes, I will indeed. So my name is Caroline Göhler. I'm a horticulturist and chartered landscape architect and currently the president of the Landscape Institute. And it's really fantastic what all you have been saying, because this is what we do as landscape architects, trying to get in there early to create the places which address all the different issues. And nowadays we don't talk anymore about consultation, but co-creation, bringing people from the ground together to really develop their new plans. And certainly the current housing agenda with 1.5 million exercises us a lot, because we feel we should be then in there early to make sure people get really the best out of the landscape they live in or going to live in. So for me, having the housing or the special bill you're proposing is a really great idea. I've also managed land in my career, and for public design, for public sector, third sector, and so on. And I have seen all the different issues, and we're going all the time round and round and round and never really improving it. COVID has shown us how good green spaces are for people. And what I'm always talking about is the health and well-being, not just of people,